2023 to order at, what is it, 12:05, starting a little bit late. I'm Mark Havens, and I'm just acting presider of this meeting at the moment. First item on our agenda, and there are, is that what this is? What's over here?
Yeah, I put the ADA transition report and the agenda.
Oh, that is the agenda. If anyone in the audience needs an agenda, there's printed copies here. First item is citizen comments. Besides what's coming up elsewhere on the agenda, do we have any citizen comments?
I do. I just want to let, it's mainly Johanna Musset Frank, live in Lewiston. I just want, this is kind of based for Eric Peterson, for him to check other states. Washington, Clarkson, Washington, will bump Idaho into a duplicate participation, even though Social Security already knows that you live in Idaho because of a computer glitch. And because of the coronavirus, Washington will not want you to be uncovered. And so they will bump you the next month right back into their system. So that's called in Idaho participation, duplicate participation. And then you have to call the person and set up, but it does complicate services, especially with the homeless. Then I already mentioned about the tax. No money is available at Tri-State for taxi, and that's the main thing. And Melina has a My Choice debit card, and in my case, as always, you know, it's never gotten here since November. So, but Washington, I don't think has nothing to do with it. That that's just want you guys to know that the state of Idaho has a dual participation, and then you have to call this person, you know, and you know how you talk to that 800 number or whatever, you don't, you know, it doesn't get back to you, and you're on it forever. So thank you. I'm glad you're back, Eric. Coming.
Yes,
okay.
will be soon.
And I know you can figure out which state have that. Bye.
Thank you, Joanna. Yeah, for the record, we should, and for anybody who might be listening and they can't see us, could we go around the room and introduce who's present here? And then I think we just have one person on the phone, but I'm Mark Havens.
I'm Amy Brogan.
Jessica Granger.
Constance Vance.
And that's four of us. And Eric Peterson, and you are where at the moment, Eric, on the phone?
Eric Peterson, I'm in the state of Idaho.
Oh, you're in Idaho currently.
Not in Lewiston.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got problems with a wheelchair, and I'm getting bus service working with a problem wheelchair.
Okay. So for those who might be listening, that's 5 out of 6 of the members. Member Mike Feeney is excused because he indicated he's unable to attend today, right?
Yes.
Nikki?
Mm-hmm.
And Nikki Province?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've ever said your last
Yeah.
name out loud, is taking our minutes for today.
Yes.
The first item under the discussion items is a presentation on the ADA transition plan, which there are copies up front here if anyone needs them. Presenting this will be the city's Public Works Director, Dustin Johnson. And right up front, I want to ask, is this for information only, or are you asking us to vote on this?
That is a good question. I will go into detail as to why that is a good question and the challenges of making that question.
Okay.
So, Dustin Johnson, Public Works Director. We have a few new members. Constance, I don't know if you were here in the last time we adopted this. Okay, so Eric Peterson, board member, is kind of has been the champion of this ADA transition plan. I started with the city about 3 years ago, and since the last 3 years, we have adopted an ADA transition plan, which is a federal requirement. And I will not even try and speak to these federal requirements. If you ever want a lesson, Eric is very well versed in it. But the city had an ADA transition plan, but it was not anything that was adequate enough for what we wanted. So I think 3 years ago, we adopted a plan. And so any true ADA transition plan is a plan that it is continually being updated and being addressed, because if you've ever been to any, I'm talking any community, there are deficiencies within the ADA infrastructure that are provided within the community. And so every community out there should be working off a plan of how we are transitioning to make our city more compliant. And it is a multi-pronged approach. And so what we've done, we've adopted a plan, and then every year I come to this committee and the council to update where the plan is currently and improvements that we have made. And so I'll go into a little bit of detail and to address Mr. Haven's question as to what I'm looking for. So the problem has always been, this is the update for calendar year 22. It looks really embarrassing when we adopt it in August or September. And so, I'd like to have this that everybody's had a chance to review it and everybody's provided comments, and we adopt it on the front end of the next year. The problem has always been, we all get too busy, we send things out, we don't get updates, we maybe miss a meeting, and so we have to wait for a month. And so what I'm looking for you guys, you obviously didn't get a copy of this in your packet or any advance notice. This will be at the city council for their acceptance. And so what I'm looking for you guys is to, obviously you haven't had a chance to read it, but I'll kind of go through this a little bit here briefly. If you want to provide comments, we can incorporate changes up into even after the city council. But I would ask that you accept the report pending any future comments. If you feel strongly that you don't want to write a blank check, that's fine. Like I said, I would like to get this adopted. It's in the same format. So to go into the report.
Before you go forward.
Yep.
Just to make sure, Eric on the phone, you have a digital version of this, correct?
I do.
Yeah, we're looking at the paper copy. And also, for the sake of clarification, and especially our new members or anyone listening, this is not the plan.
No.
That's a whole different document, which if you haven't seen or don't have a copy, you other members or members of the public can request. This is an annual report on the progress of the plan last year. So that's all it is a report on what happened last year. Now, I haven't read the whole thing, but does this include, besides reporting on last year, does it include a plan for like what's going to happen in 2023? Are there elements of that?
Yeah, there are some elements in that.
Okay.
It doesn't really, unless there was something identified in I'll go back to, so
Eric Peterson, clarification.
Yep.
Yeah, what do you disagree with, Eric?
It actually becomes part of the plan.
Yes, so as part of the reporting, and this is part of, for whatever, I'm trying to say this diplomatically. So yes, each of these reports are compiled with the plan itself. And so for whatever reason, if the most common example, which I don't like to use, would be a lawsuit. Somebody says the city is not abiding by their ADA transition plan, and they would give a reason as to why. In litigation, they would go back and say, okay, here's your plan, here's each annual report, how are you not addressing these issues? And so it shows the efforts, not just, you'll look into this, there's this board, there's private investments, and we're talking about websites, we're talking about building access, there's so many facets to what is considered ADA and what's transitioning in this plan. So that's why this report is part of the overall plan.
Okay, thank you. Proceed.
As I was saying, we try and keep these reports somewhat in the same format for that exact reason. So you can go back and you can start tracking each report. Jumping to page 4. there's a section dedicated to Disability Advisory Commission. So it calls out the actions this board have taken, who's part of the board, discussions, projects they're working on, issues that they have addressed, and then kind of their, there's the website and their meeting agendas. So we purposely keep, as my preference would be to kind of keep that same format, so you can go back and you can say, when was Jed Randall's term? When did he term out? When did he leave? What were the actions that were taken under his watch as the chairman? You can kind of keep going through programs and services that are provided, projects that the city has undertaken. A lot of these things, if you get onto page 6, you'll start seeing some private investment. So anything, there's a spreadsheet on page 7. Those projects, those are...
Clarification.
Yes, Eric.
Dustin, the city actually has a committee that meets on this collectively, and I can't recall what its name is, but they're the people that are gathering this information for the report, and the Disability Advisory Commission is actually separate than that, and that is us. Am I correct in that statement?
You are correct. Yep, so we have our own staff, and that is broken down to, what is your title, Nikki? You're the
ADA coordinator.
You're ADA coordinator, so Nikki is kind of the point person for ADA coordinating.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what we do with our own internal committee, I think we're just called the ADA Transition Plan Committee. It's an informal committee. We didn't really get fancy titles, but the bulk of what we do is the efforts that come out of whether it's the city council or this committee or state, federal guidelines. We consider how our plan meets those guidelines or direction that we were provided, and then for the reporting purposes, a lot of that falls into public works where we track. So like on page 7, figure 2, we track all of that into our inventory. So we have, a lot of it is just database generating. We know how many ramps were constructed. 11 ramps were built in 2022 within the city. Those are the private investments within the system, but they're still within the right of way. So we count those. Any questions based off of what we do and why we do it? I will say this is probably the shortest report that we've had. Not intending to make it the shortest report. It's just there was less investment in the public right of way than there was in years past. So next year's will probably be a larger report. It's just that's just the nature of as the calendar year rolls. Sometimes there's a lot of projects, sometimes they're not. The one thing I do want to call out on page 8 and 9. Which is so that ADA transition plan identified priority routes, and they're kind of your obvious routes, so the ones that are most used in Main, Thane, Dryden, D Street, Southway. I'm sure 21st is on here. Oh yeah, Main, yeah. So all your main routes are identified as primary corridors, and so these have been taken almost directly from the Transportation Capital Improvement Plan. And so this table basically says the progress or lack thereof that have been made in these corridors. And these are...
Eric Peterson, clarification.
Yes, Eric.
One of the things in the ADA transition plan is in between these reporting periods, if there's something that has not been budgeted or directed that is brought up by citizens, that there will be an effort to make a compliance on a one-time only with that. And I would believe those would show up also on this annual report. Has that occurred?
I don't, I'm trying to, my years get mixed up.
I don't see it on there.
Yes, so if you look at, on page 7, there was some ADA ramps, there was a gap in, it's the third line down, LC Auto. There was a missing ramp, and so I have I have I can't remember, it's $50,000 in a budget to address specific things. And so there was some work being done, I think this is right in the interface between Rogers and El Ciado, which is down there, the next one to the north, down the hill. There was some interface in there, so the city put 387 linear feet of sidewalk and one ADA ramp, and that was paid for by public dollars. And then I guess, I don't think that came out of my budget, but there was some work at the Orchards Pool.
Just as a suggestion, would it not be advisable to somehow mark those as an asterisk or something that's indeed, these were not in a grant, in a whatever, it was just accomplished at citizen's request or something?
Sure, yeah.
If we could do that, I think it would comply with the spirit of the actual 88 transition plan.
Yeah.
Justin, since we're
We'll set up
on, figure 2, and I don't drive past this very often on Thane, but the new Zip restaurant, drive-in restaurant on Thane is showing, which is the second one on that chart, is showing that there were no ramps constructed in that sidewalk, which it's on a corner of Preston and Thane and 9th Street. How could there be no ramps?
That they were either already compliant or there weren't any ramps there. I'm not familiar enough with that site to know why there were no ramps there.
Eric Peterson, I actually go over that site fairly routinely. There are ramps there.
Okay.
So the 17,500 investment was just extensions of the sidewalk?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And the ramps were already existing?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
So that's basically the overview. As I said, we didn't get this in time to your packet. Our goal is to give it to you for your packet, so you have an opportunity to review it, provide comment at the meeting, and then I can bundle those and take to the council. Unfortunately, since it wasn't in your packet, please feel free, you can email any comments to Nikki or myself. We can get it incorporated into the plan. We'll take it to the council and they don't adopt it by resolution, they just accept the report.
Eric Peterson, clarification.
Yes, Eric.
Can I take it that the request that I submitted during this meeting, I do not have to email on?
I got them.
Yes, he's taking notes.
Thank you.
I think it looks great. I mean, compared to a few years ago when there was less or nothing. Which these things don't fall out of the air, I should point out. So a few years ago, there was no city staff paying attention to these finer points. Even if the projects were getting done. Even if the projects were getting done, no one's writing that like a report.
Yeah.
And so this takes time. This is not nothing. Somebody is keeping track of these things and putting their fingers to a keyboard and typing all of this out. So there is a record, and the city is protected if there were to be complaints or litigation. So I mean, that's great. I'm still a little uncertain about the 2 pages of figure 3, well, a little over 1 page, versus figure 2. Figure 2 is stuff that is done. It has been done. Even though there's no dates on it, it was done in 2022. And figure 3, this long list, reading through it, it just seems to be a combination of a few things that were done last year, that were completed, you see that word here, things that are in progress, things that have been prioritized that might be done later this year or in the future. Am I correct there that it's a sort of a combination of all those things?
Yeah, it's funny that you hit on that because, because I went back and forth with Community Development Director Shannon Groh, who said basically the same thing of saying, you're kind of regurgitating the capital improvements plan. And and we went back and forth, and obviously it's still in the report as we cleaned it up a little bit, but I guess I would flip this back to this group, in that as much as I appreciate the transition plan as it has been adopted, that we adopted 3 years ago, my critique of it now, having worked with it for this long, would say these priority routes are too broad. You've identified these massive 21st Street and Main Street, and instead of specific, neighborhoods or general areas where you can say, I want to improve the mobility for this segment, and it's more achievable. And because now what we have is these massive corridors, and I don't want to ignore any component of that corridor, and so you get this hodgepodge of, yeah, we're working on this, we finished that, and we're not even really considering that, and it's so broad. I'd like to better refine that, and I'm not quite sure how to do that, but I do between your comment and then Shannon's comment of, we have transportation planning documents, we have all this stuff, it's just trying to refine it to a level where we actually feel like we're accomplishing something.
Eric Peterson, comment?
Yes, Eric?
Okay, one of the key reasons to have the ADA transition plan is so that you are documenting that you are seeking to get in compliance with the 1992 ADA American Disability Act and its subsequent amendments like in 2008, etc., and all the technical advice things are sent. And one of the things, if you come in and the Department of Justice questions it, you have to go in and spend a horrendous amount of time building up the evidence that should have been there on doing what we're doing. So what Dustin is actually stating, kind of contradicting what Shannon's addressing here, is doesn't matter if it's in those other plans. What you want is an organized evidentiary list. What Dustin is doing by putting in these comments is building that evidentiary list that directs and would lead you to all these others. It saves a horrendous amount of time and addresses the problem the Department of Justice would bring in if there was a complaint filed immediately, rather than having to do the work to catch up. You're much better to just say, oh yeah, we've got that, here it is. So I appreciate what you're doing, Dustin, and if we need to amend any specific language in the actual transition plan beyond what we have in the reports, I'd be more than willing to support that. I'm done.
Thank you, Eric. Do our other members have questions?
So you're just talking about being more specific on figure 3 then?
Yeah, we have talked, Eric and I have talked at length. There's a couple projects, I know of 3 off the top of my head, only one of which has been fixed, that have been thorns in, I will say my side, but all of our sides in addressing deficiencies in the infrastructure. And I feel like it's that question, do you tackle the issue top down or bottom up? And
Sure.
I almost feel like, given there's projects, so case in point, Bryden phase 1, 4th to 7th, will make that entire corridor from 4th to 7th compliant in one fell swoop.
Okay, yeah.
We don't have the money, nor is it expected that we have the money, that we're going to go through and make all of these massive arterial roads reconstructed and compliant. So as we start working on projects that are on this list, that are major corridors, that are going to be big investments, I think, and I'm going to lean on Eric and his knowledge of the Department of Justice and how they incorporate it, but from me as looking at it as a public works director, I'm saying I can tackle 21st Street, Bryden, Main Street, D Street on a big whole corridor perspective, but at the same time, I think it would be great to be able to backfill and identify, this particular area is a high used area. The one I'm using that has been a moderate success was Warner. There was no pedestrian anything on the north or either side, and so we worked with the county to put in a pedestrian trail that is ADA compliant to get kids or anybody to even the park or the high school from those residential areas. And so taking on projects like that yeah, Warner is not compliant. We don't have sidewalks, we don't have curb gutter, there's nothing there. It needs to be reconstructed. But in the meantime, we've improved the area for pedestrian and ADA use.
Sure. Well,
And
some of
that's-
these are really long sections,
Yeah.
like
Yep, and that's.
Main Street, 1st to 21st.
Exactly,
That's a very
exactly.
large
And I don't even know how many
section.
ramps are, I know I have it in writing somewhere of how many ramps are we identifying? And
Right.
it is a lot.
You
And-
could get 90% of that done and feel really accomplished, but it's
Yeah.
not gonna come
And,
off
and
the
our,
list.
our problem is, so Main Street's slated for reconstruction. Do we want to go and replace 60% of the ramps and have them ripped out in 5 years?
No.
Probably not. So,
No.
No.
So then
Eric,
it stays
you
on
have
the
a
list.
comment?
Yes, Eric?
Yeah, Department of Justice is most interested in making effort to come into compliance. So those little steps mean a lot when you don't have to do them because you haven't, whatever, but you make the effort. That is a valuable process, because then DOJ works with you rather than just going right to settlements.
Right.
Which are not what you want. And, oh, I'm forgetting what I was gonna say, sure, quick memory problem. It was kind of, the little pieces that you put in are, and from that same context, really important. What I was going to say is, when you don't have a curb cut and you put one in, even though it may have a new one put in 5 years from now, if there are complaints about it from citizens, that's the type of thing that we try and get done because there's an issue that's been addressed. So tearing out an existing curb cut, hell, probably 70% of the curb cuts in the valley aren't compliant. They're off by little bits, they have too much of a rise in the crown in the street, there's all sorts of problems. But I'm with Dustin in that we make it, unless someone complains, and then we have we do the new plan, then we just put in brand new. So I'm with Dustin on everything he's saying on this, and I worked with him as a citizen on the county side when we were doing the Warner one. It's the type of thing that the DAC itself does. If someone brings it up, we bring it up, we bring it to Dustin, then we kind of do what needs to be done, but we have to always balance things out too. So I'm just kind of babbling now, so I'm done.
Thank you. I was going to make a comment somewhere along that line for our newer members. Ramps are not the only ADA thing, but they do seem to get a lot of attention from this committee. And when it's under discussion, we always want to clarify, there's a lot of ramps in the city, but they're not up to the modern ADA standards of ramps. So you can count ramps, but some of the ramps have to be replaced eventually, soon, because they're too steep or whatever the compliance issue is. So there's a difference between compliant ramps and ramps in general. And
Eric Peterson, clarification,
yes,
the ramps that were built were never in compliance. It was because the people involved actually, and including the oversight people, did not engage and force that issue to bring it to the actual standards and the engineering requirements. That didn't start occurring until the ADA transition plan was actually adopted. And the oversight was actually clarified and made better. And they actually required contractors who had built ramps that were not in compliance and curbs to remove them and put in new ones. And some subs were fired on jobs and new ones brought in because of the lack of the ability to comply. So that has been a big difference. I'm done.
well, that is amazing, and I assume it's fairly recent. The update in standards that I'm thinking of, and I never can remember the right terms, but it's true now that all ramps, to be compliant, have to have what I call the dimples. and what you call something else.
Truncated domes.
Yeah, I mean, where only an engineer would like that. Truncated domes. The dimples so that a vision impaired person, you know, on top of the yellow bumps, knows that, oh, they're going down a ramp because they can feel it with their feet. And we've all seen those kind of ramps, but we've also seen ramps that don't have those. Are those required everywhere or just commercial areas?
They're required for any crossing. So if you're crossing street, those are required. You don't, I mean, like you said, if they were constructed in the 80s or before that, they don't have them.
So I don't pay attention to this when I'm driving down Prospect because I'm not usually walking on Prospect, but Prospect was reconstructed some years ago with ramps at every intersection. They all have the dimples, the truncated domes. They do. So
yeah,
they're all
yeah, they
compliant.
should. I mean,
Okay.
what was interesting, and Eric may know more than in the construction realm, and I'm dating myself. It was probably somewhere between the 90s and 2000, early 2000s. It seemed like the standard for that was so dramatic. And if you drive through neighborhoods that developed in that time period, you'll find 5 different types of ramps. These truncated domes have been around now for at least 15 years. And so that standard has been pretty set for at least in modern times. But yeah, you'll look into the 90s, you'll see ones where they formed them in the concrete, where they just roughed it up. So you'll see it look like they put like chicken wire or something in them. And then you'll see they colored some of them, darkened concrete, so they brought more attention to them. Well, if you're vision impaired, you don't see the colored concrete. Things like that. So you see the different standards, and they've finally fallen on one.
So so that's the example I use between a ramp and a compliant ramp. And we had a lengthy discussion a few years ago, that technically, legally, a letter could be sent to a property owner saying your ramp's not compliant, you have to pay to upgrade it.
Yes, so the sidewalk, as per city code and is standard all across the United States of America, the sidewalk is typically the responsibility of the homeowner, so for maintenance. So if your ramp, you've got roots that are popping up, so it's no longer a sidewalk, it's a trip hazard, things like that, or the concrete is just rotted away, it is typically the responsibility of the homeowner to bring it up to compliance standards.
And that was a discussion yes, Eric.
One of the critical components to that is it has to be brought to the person's attention, and that is generally only done by a citizen complaint. Rarely is the city involved in it. And the problem we have right now is when they dropped the online versions of making, complaints or requests, like DC has DC 311, you just put everything in on your phone and it goes in and it's routed. We no longer have that system in existence, although it could be. And Johanna brought up the fact that, and we're confirming, it's damn hard to get any request for a job or complaint now. There's no standardized system for it. That's something that is part of the ADA transition plan. It would be really good to have that in effect with the city. I'm done.
Thank you. So as I said, that was a conversation a few years ago, you know, should the city lower its heavy hand and tell people, well, you have a ramp, it's not in compliant, you have to pay to tear it out and put a compliant one in at a cost of many, many thousands of dollars. And we just sort of decided to let that lie for a while instead of upsetting people. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to, what did you want us to do? Recommend it to the city council?
It's
Or-
not an action item.
It is not.
Oh, it's not an action item?
No.
Therefore, we can't vote on it.
Jessica Granger, I am not trying to be technical, but I think I noticed that your name was spelled wrong, so
It
I was
is.
just gonna say that.
Morgan.
Oh, no, that's
That's
important.
my fault.
Oh, okay,
I'll
sorry,
take
I just noticed it, I was
responsibility.
Jessica's looking out for me.
Big comments over
No.
here.
Instead of.
Also, Dustin, on that page 8, number 6, that last bullet, I think intersection is used twice. But
Page 8, number
it
6.
says 17th and
intersection,
23rd intersection right
Yeah,
now.
that's true.
We like that word.
You like that one?
Sorry, I'm not trying to be nitpicky either.
Constance Vance. I do note for like ADA compliance when it comes to sidewalks, we had a situation at OUI just down the street, Idaho Street, I know everybody loves talking about because it is terrible. We had a gentleman in a wheelchair, the ridge to the entrance of our parking lot, and the road was steep and he spilled out of his wheelchair and it was there was a truck. It was very sad. And so I immediately hopped into, so I called the road folks.
Yep.
And they immediately told me that it was our fault and our responsibility. So I called somebody to come take a look at it and she said, no, this is a public works thing because it was the road that had just been redone that was causing the incompliance. So I don't know if there is a way to better communicate that if it is the road, then it's not, I don't know.
Yeah.
If I hadn't had a woman that was well-versed in what this was, then OUI, which is a nonprofit, would have been spending how much money trying to make it compliant when it wasn't on.
Yeah, and I was gonna bring it up, but it's pretty deep in the details, but what you'll see, and I think I know what so basically the asphalt was we brought it up, and so you had a lip there up to the concrete, correct?
Well, the concrete, there was a curve in it, and he had said something about stormwater. Well, we have this at a very specific grade, but between the sidewalk and the road was a solid 2-inch dip before the road evened out again.
Okay, yeah. That is, and I'm speaking of from an engineer perspective, not an ADA perspective. The biggest challenge we face is when you put in just ramps by themselves, or that may not even be the case there. You have pavement preservation, so the life of the pavement is shorter than the sidewalk, and so you'll come in and you'll mill it, or you won't mill it, you'll bring it up, and so you'll have, the pavement comes up or comes down a certain depth, and the concrete will stay constant. Or, okay, that ramp's not compliant, the pavement stays there, we're ripping that ramp out, and you try and meet all the standards that Eric is talking about, and you then created a bird bath, and because it's now lower than the road, and so it collects full of water and it doesn't drain correctly. So these are a nightmare to retrofit in oftentimes. I mean, especially when you're on a hill like this and everything's on a slope as you're coming down, and you have to have a ramp, so you have a landing essentially. And so these are very challenging, and they become very expensive when people bid these, especially if they're just retrofits. We've gotten bids for ramps anywhere from the low end of $3,500 all the way up to $15,000. And because a lot of times they'll just say, my bid, I'm gonna build it twice because I know something's not gonna form out right. I'm gonna have to take it out. In WashDOT, when they did Bridge Street 3 or 4 years ago, I wanna say 40% of those ramps were non-compliant, and they came out and had to go back in. So it is a challenge. We have gotten much better than we used to be, but that's still, you still have that where you're trying to bring current standards to existing infrastructure.
Yes, Eric?
Yeah, as part of the original ADA trans and addressing what Dustin is doing, and actually it's probably his idea, somebody's idea, is there are times ramps or other things cannot be built to the stated regs due to topography, some issue there. And we basically, now there's a form, and Dustin, I think you're probably using it, where if there is a variance from the compliance standards, there is a report made and put in as part of the annual report. Again, so the evidence is there. You do the best you can do under the circumstances, and DOJ is generally pretty good with that. So the other thing is, I'm just going to mention, and we already know that when a street is resurfaced or whatever, and there's a curb cut, that curb cut's brought up to current standards. Am I correct on that, Dustin?
Yeah. Yeah. So anything that's I can't remember what the term is, but anything beyond a surface treatment requires ADA ramps to come up to code.
Right.
We're working on.
And I've talked to the DOJ and the Department of Transportation. I know what that means explicitly. We've already gone through it with the city, and they're doing what they need to do. One of the things that you run into often in curb cuts, as in the past, there's been overlay after overlay after overlay before they had this change, and you have valleys that go in there where if you're running certain types of wheelchairs, you can't get out of it because you're stuck. Those will gradually disappear over time because of that if they're now required, if you redo the street beyond just a surface oil and whatever, to redo the curb cuts. So again, those go in the report. It becomes part of the ADA plan itself, and the evidence is all there. Everything I'm seeing is great, and I make a motion to approve the, we can't do it because it's whatever, but I think we can probably do just an informal thoughts of the individual commissioners, whether they would support this in a future action item. I personally, in a future action item for next month, would support this.
I think.
I'm not committing.
Thank you, Eric, but is this going to the city council
This is going to-
less than a month?
Yeah, it's going on the, yeah.
Monday.
Yeah,
Well, since
by
it's-
doing that, we give a flavor of what the commission would say
Well, since
without
it's-
actually saying a report, but giving it advisory
I know.
decision.
I know, but since it's not an action item, we can't vote on it. I would just direct
It's not voting.
Justin can,
It's giving
Dustin.
an advisory.
Justin can report to the city council that it has been presented to the Disability Advisory Commission and our comments and corrections have been incorporated
That's perfect.
as such.
Here we go.
I think that's as far as we
That
can
works for
go.
me.
All right, thank you. If there's nothing else, we'll move on. Thank you for your time.
Can I just clarify
Yes.
something, Mark?
Sure.
The transition plan does have a ADA compliant grievance process listed in it, and it's very explicit. It provides a letter, a contact, and why you would contact them. So I just want to make sure that there's clear that there is a process for reporting ADA issues within the city. So I just want to clarify that because I don't think that was,
Eric Peterson, making clarification. That is correct and has been there for some time. You need to go to the webpage, you need to do that. However, the ability to make these informed reports to the various departments and such, it used to be easy. It's extremely difficult. There's no standardized form for just making reports. Hey, this hedge is overgrowing the sidewalk. Hey, this has this little problem here. Hey, code enforcement, this is out of whatever. That doesn't exist now with the city of Lewiston. That's separate than the ADA complaint process, which works to resolution before a complaint. So those reports aren't actually those specifically that would go to the ADA, but if they're not complied with or whatever, they become part of the complaint to the ADA. So I'm just adding to what Nikki's saying and not attacking the city of Lewiston's ADA complaint form. I am saying there is inadequate ability for ease of reporting code enforcement type issues. I'm done.
Thank you. Well, that sounds like a possible future agenda item.
well, and I just want to put, since this is live streamed, I just want to put out there
Definitely.
too. He's right, and that's a great, suggestion for us to make, to look into that, but if people do, they don't have to go through a formal process. People do reach out to me and say, that they've tripped over a sidewalk or what's going on with this or that. I've gotten a call about a hedge that was blocking a sidewalk, and anytime I get those phone calls, I do reach out to the departments and ask them to address those complaints or work with the person who's
Eric Peterson,
complained.
clarification.
Yes.
By the ADA code, the original one, by the transition plan, that is exactly the process of what an ADA coordinator does. They take in the issue, work towards resolution. If there's not resolution, then the complaint process is generally followed. 95% of things get resolved by the ADA coordinator, which is why the position is so important. I'm done.
Thank you. All right, well, you have your response from
Good.
us.
Thank you.
I believe we have a member who has to leave a little early. Is that correct? And I don't
I have a
know.
meeting at 1 o'clock every
So you're
Thursday.
planning to leave at about 12:50?
I'll stay if we're gonna vote, because I don't think we can vote unless I stay.
I think there's a quorum.
Well, I just wanted to move ahead. I'm not sure why the second item was on the active item.
Eric Peterson moving to table the item B in discussion to the next meeting.
You asked me to put it on there, Mark, but we can move it.
Well, and I assume that perhaps Carol was maybe going to be present. There's no urgency. Well,
Do you want to
even
put
though
it
it's
on next
important.
month's meeting,
Sure,
and then we can
yes.
invite Carol? You want to do that?
Sure, and maybe the county management, emergency
Oh,
management
Mark Bird,
person.
okay.
But we have a motion on the floor to table agenda item 3B.
I remove the motion.
Oh, you do?
Okay.
Okay.
Isn't that what you just did by
Mhm.
moving it to the next meeting, Mark?
Right, and that's mainly in the interest of time more than anything.
Yeah, and I withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Constance Vance, I had reached out to Nikki asking to put this on the agenda myself, so, it is great. I've been making some strides. Mark Hurd is aware of a similar thing, that we have some things in the works, and this is just from a professional standpoint, not from DAC. But if we could table it for the next meeting, because I do think that there's a lot of information that we could
Well, I think
contribute.
the emergency management coordinator, Mark Hurd,
Mhm.
yeah, has
can
this
invite
on
him.
his radar screen and
Mhm.
plans to address it, but perhaps not as early as April, but it is being looked at. All right, we need to move to the active item where we're being asked to elect a chairman and vice chairman for the commission, because we currently don't have any. Our chairman's term expired, right? His term expired.
Yeah, January.
He didn't resign. And so technically, the procedure would be opening nominations for those positions. Can we nominate someone that's not here, like Mike? Or
Go for it. He'll
Or
live
Amy
later.
if she leaves.
Yeah.
Amy's not leaving.
Okay. Because I'll tell you right now, don't think you're going to nominate me, I won't accept. I'm too busy.
Eric Peterson nominates Amy Brogan.
Eric Peterson.
There's
Yep.
Can I second?
there's a good
I'm
reason
kidding.
for this.
There's no second required on the
There's no
nomination.
second required. We're about 7 years old, I think, that DAC is, and all of the chairmen have all been men, even though we've had an array of women on the commission, and I think it'd be really a good idea to have some diversity. Anyway, would you accept the nomination?
Amy,
Do you want me to provide any example of like what a chairman might do?
Yeah, you guys are like making me nervous.
Yeah.
Seems like a lot of
Pressure.
responsibility. I'm not really sure about
I
that.
don't.
Well,
I think it's a good-
the chairman or woman would run the meeting, so just as Mark has done, kind of hold us accountable to open meeting law or move the meeting along
in time.
in time. And HR works with the chairperson to develop the agenda. And so sometimes that's using what was discussed here in the meeting, and sometimes it's bringing forward things that you've wanted to put on. It's kind of a collective thing, so it doesn't hold specifically to you. But
Sure.
there's a lot of times we'll do things just like we did. We'll move it to the next meeting, and we've got some other things already on the April agenda. So did I kind of explain that well, Mark? Can you
No,
think of anything?
that's it. I was going to have to defend myself if I was going to be pushed into this. That the main thing is just, presiding over the meeting.
My
chairing the
biggest
meeting.
concern is I have a Thursday meeting every Monday. I have a meeting, see, you guys have me so nervous.
Amy, would you like me to steal your nomination?
Yeah. Well, because I have,
Still, would you be willing to be chair?
I would be willing.
there we go. I nominate Constance Vance.
Okay, so Amy,
call for the vote.
Amy has withdrawn
Yeah.
your candidacy. Okay, and I'm thrilled, Constance, because you've been on longer, I think. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor of electing Constance? These are just one-year terms, right? So next
Every
it's
January
not
we should be
forever.
coming back to it.
All in favor of
Good deal.
electing Constance Vance as the new Disability Advisory Commission Chairman, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Constance. Congratulations. Unless you want to take over this second, I'll just continue. So I'll continue.
Please
So
continue.
next item, election of the vice chair. No chairman, although actually maybe Jed never missed a meeting, I'm thinking.
I don't think you
He
did.
never missed a meeting, but before that, occasionally chair people aren't able to attend, and then that's why it's very useful to have a vice chair who Nikki does not consult with for the agenda.
But I can.
Yeah, and I'm not sure they have any greater input than any of the rest of us for getting agenda items on, but that way there's a second person to turn to preside over the meeting. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I'd be willing to do that.
Okay.
I nominate Amy Brogan.
Amy Brogan's been nominated. Any other nominations? Okay, I'll close nominations and then ask for a vote to elect Amy Brogan as the vice chair of the commission. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Amy. Nikki, would you communicate that to whomever needs to, the city council and the mayor, that we now have our officers. Approval of minutes. For the record, there was one or two of us in February, so not a quorum. That's why there's no minutes for February. But they were in front of us at that time. So hopefully, at some time in the past, you have read the November, December, January 12th minutes. I will say that I read them all. I think I was at all of those meetings, and I thought they were wonderful. I had no suggestions, because if I had, I would have told you in February of changes. Are there any additions or corrections to those 3 months? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve all three, and that would bring us up to date.
I'll move.
Second.
Moved by Constance, seconded by Jessica to approve the minutes of November 10th, 2022, December 8th, 2022, January 12th, 2023. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are now approved, and the minutes are posted on the website, right? Because they're public documents.
Yeah, they're given to Carrie to bring in front of council for
Oh, the council
adoption.
gets Oh, they have to adopt them? Well, they're not at our meetings. How can they adopt them?
I don't know, I see them on every city council agenda.
Well, they accept them. I guess.
Accept
They
them,
accept
maybe
them.
that's the right word.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Next item is future agenda items. Besides the one we have postponed, Nikki, you seem to indicate there might be some others.
Yeah, well, Eric was gonna do the white cane law.
White cane laws
Yes.
presentation?
Yeah, we
Okay.
had moved that to April, if that's
Okay.
still what you guys wanna do.
Sure.
Okay, and then there
Yeah.
was, the emergency,
Mhm.
and there was also the snow shoveling, but we've kind of, I think, moved on from that.
True.
But I don't know if that's something you guys
I
wanted
could
to.
bring that up under commission comments,
Okay,
to dispatch that.
The item that we talked about, and I've been kind of hitting on, is the online reporting system for
Online reporting
and
system.
other issues.
Online reporting. So that would also be a presentation. Would we have any?
I think it'd be a discussion.
Okay, well, a discussion.
Have to go.
But would we have any
Is our
active
end-
agenda items besides approving minutes? Is there
this is just
any time-sensitive thing?
I don't think so.
Okay. If something were to arise in the next month, you'll discuss it with our new chair.
Yeah.
Jessica, as an active item. But again, and if those of you aren't familiar with the finer points of what we're talking about here, you'll learn. There's a difference between presentations to us, discussion items that we do not vote on, versus an active item that is advertised in advance that we're going to vote on. Not that our votes are that important, they're just recommendations to the city council, but we can't vote on things unless it's been advertised to the public. And we've been cautioned about that. So no other suggestions? That does sound like that will take the hour in April, probably. Commission comments? Yes?
May I?
Amy,
About
Constance.
the snow shovel removal, which I think we can kick that down the road a little bit longer, but I do have a couple of groups that sounded as though they were very interested in taking that up. So maybe at the end of the summer when we actually.
Yeah.
Well, see, that was sort of, the subject came up when it presented itself as a problem, and then different people were addressing it. It was my understanding that the city, and Carol Maurer had information on this, had arranged with some people students at Lewis Clark State College.
That was Constance.
Oh, that was Constance?
Yes.
Oh, okay. But you must have communicated it to Carol, because I think she knew about it.
No, because it never
No.
became anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whereas Interlink,
Eric,
yes, Eric.
much like the warming shelter issues, the time to deal with things like that for winter is actually in spring. To bring it up so that you actually have things in place before the situation arises.
Yes, true. These things were not late. They might have been late for the snows of December. It's just that discussing them, they kept getting bumped off our agenda. So Interlink had put into place back in January or maybe even December with the LDS Church. The men's group of the LDS Church agreed to take on any snow shoveling project that they heard about or that came through us, because Interlink would get phone calls and we'd say, well, we don't do this, but we wanted to know who to refer them to. And then I heard about the students. And now, I think all of this would have to be confirmed for next winter season, especially because students change every year, especially the students. But our coordinator at the LDS Church would probably also need to be confirmed next fall.
And Mark, it sounds like there's a lot of discussion, so I think we should maybe add it as a discussion item. And what if we added it to May? I mean, we can kick it down the road. It doesn't have to be April, it
Sure.
could be May.
Well, that's why, like, even the middle of the summer when it's
Yeah, and
90
then you
bajillion
can talk a
degrees
little bit
outside.
more about the LDS, you could talk a little bit more about LCSC.
Sure.
And then, you know, how to get those in place by, then like, I don't know, October,
As long
November.
as we don't, you know, we wouldn't want the news media or reporter to say these are for sure things for
Yeah.
next winter, when actually they were just put in place for last winter and they would need to be confirmed.
Yeah,
So progress was made, it just wasn't, there was never any time to discuss it here. So that's fine with me. Staff liaison comments. Why is it staff liaison? Just it's staff reports. By the way, there's an additional I in liaison, L-I-A-I, I think.
Yes.
Is
I
there?
have to type that a
Yeah.
lot of the time.
L-I-A-I,
Yes.
S-O-N.
okay.
If that's been on any previous agenda,
That's
well, it
all of
has
them.
been, because I see February, yeah, well, I just noticed it.
The only thing that I would say is, one of the things that Jed had communicated was a representative at the TAC.
Oh, that's right.
And I don't know that that's something you guys need to vote on, but if there was somebody who was interested in representing DAC at TAC,
That's the
Transportation
Transportation
Advisory
Advisory Commission. How
Commission?
often
Yeah.
do they meet? Is it monthly?
Yes.
okay. Yeah, I can ask Shannon, who's, you know, involved with
I
it.
think you'd have to bring us more information as well as when and
I
where.
can email it to you.
When and where they
When and
meet.
where? Okay.
And then I don't remember voting on,
Eric Peterson,
yes, Eric?
I already watch or attend those meetings.
Oh, okay.
Because that's where you find out about what's happening. I'd be, if someone else wants to do it to learn about it and whatever, great. But if there's no one that's interested, and I'd rather have someone else do it, but I'm already there for most of them when I'm in town.
Yes, I was going to say, I don't remember the group voting on JED, because I think
He was just
as an
interested.
agenda item, it would go to the chair, and the chair could claim that role if the chair wanted to, and if not, appoint somebody. Yeah, because I don't even know if it has to be brought before the whole group. Could
I don't
appoint
think-
someone.
yeah.
So if Constance is so inclined, you could appoint Eric to be our representative.
Well, I think
And
how,
I'd rather,
I was gonna sneeze.
That sounds like an agenda, would that be
Yeah.
an agenda item?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I think how it came about was, MPO was on an agenda. And during that discussion, Shannon had mentioned TAC and asked that if a Disability Advisory Commission person would be interested, that they could participate that. I don't think there was ever an official vote or an appointment. I mean, I can go back and look at minutes, but that's why I brought it up in staff comments. So if you do want it to be an appointment, then yeah, we can put it on April's agenda
Eric
as an
Peterson
appointment.
comment.
Yes, Eric?
If there is an appointment, that person would probably be allowed to actually sit at the table and make comments at the meeting.
But
Maybe
you don't
that's-
have a vote, right? Because you're just a liaison. Or what's it called?
I think that would be
What's the
correct.
position?
The liaison, I mean, we
Yeah.
had the TAC and the DAC, the Transportation Advisory Commission, which was kind of a fiefdom that liked to move stop signs, and DAC originally, and we had a liaison between those two commissions in the city, which just meant the other person could be there and talk but didn't vote. That's what I would expect to be on the TAC, which is actually from a separate entity, the MPO,
It's going through audit.
which is
Oh.
a metropolitan planning organization.
Oh, it's
So
not,
that would be good.
it's not even a city committee?
Mm-mm,
Okay.
no.
I was gonna
No,
say you
there's
would,
city representatives, county representatives from multiple entities around. So having a seat at that table just to communicate and know what's going on is pretty valuable, and Jeff knew that.
you'd have a vote only if they granted you a vote. And I was going to just say, I thought it was the city committee and the mayor would have to appoint you.
Mm-mm, no, that's
So
not.
that being said, I'm the representative from this group to the Strategic Planning Steering Committee,
Mhm.
SPSC, which held its first meeting.
Yeah,
And I believe my name went through the mayor to be one of the appointed people. I do have a vote. But we just had our first meeting on Monday, 3 days ago, and there's 24 or 25 people. And we're only going to meet every 2 months for a year and a half.
so yeah, I can put it on, April's agenda. It's not for discussion and appointment. You wanna do that?
Sure.
The only other thing I was gonna say was I sent you guys an email regarding Michael Ruth. He's
Matt Ruth.
Matt Ruth, thank you. He's gonna go, his application's gonna go in front of council on the 27th, and so
Okay.
if they approve him, he'll be the next
He'll be here
commissioner.
next month.
Yeah.
But we couldn't elect him chair, right?
We totally could have too, if we would have helped us out a little more.
I want to thank Constance for
Me
stepping up.
too.
I
Thank you,
was
Constance.
concerned maybe nobody would want to and that would present a problem.
My only hesitation is that I don't know Robert's rules, so
Oh,
Can we get,
I think
was
there's,
that part of the,
That,
sorry.
that's okay, we don't use Robert's Rules of Order.
oh. Do we not have to?
well,
I'll just-
motions and seconds.
That's what I would need help
You'll
with,
learn.
but other than
As
that,
we
I mean,
go
I can come up
along.
with all sorts of stuff to,
Yeah, you'll
to
learn
talk about.
as you go along. It's-
It'll be a learning process, but you'll do great.
You're with me.
Maybe sometime at a future meeting, I might give a progress report on the strategic planning process. As I said, they're estimating at least a year and a half, and the group itself won't meet every month. So there's no urgency, but people might be interested in how that's going. Do you know anything about it, Nikki, yourself?
Yeah, I'm copied on all the emails that are getting sent out. I didn't attend the meeting, but yeah.
I know we're past time, but this will save me a separate phone call to Eric that he might be interested in this. Are you listening, Eric?
I am.
So apparently, because this was shared at some point, there will be, as a part of the strategic plan, which I think most of us know typically focuses a lot on land use issues and city growth. And it was mentioned, and the city has hired a consulting firm out of Colorado called Logan Smith. I thought that was a person, not a firm. And then they've subcontracted out certain things, which included, when they were sharing all this, our good friend good people down in Meridian who did the ADA plan for the city, Vitruvian. So
Yeah.
Vitruvian is a subcontractor, and it was asked why. Well, because the strategic plan is going to have to contain a chapter or a section or throughout the plan, an element on health. You know about this, Nikki?
Wow.
I don't.
On the health of the citizenry. And of course, given what Interlink's been working on, I thought, well, that's interesting. That's an area that's never before been addressed in the strategic plan. I wonder why. Well, the why is because the city got a great big grant from Blue Cross Foundation, which Eric's familiar with a little bit. The Blue Cross Foundation for this strategic planning process with the condition that the plan has to address the subject of health, because they're a healthcare foundation.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a grant. The person I spoke with said she thought the grant was in the range of $30,000. So not a small grant.
Oh, yeah, I thought it was like 20, but I don't know.
Okay, possibly 20,000, but not a small grant.
Yeah.
So given that Eric and I sit on the board of advisors for the Los Clark Valley Healthcare Foundation, I found all of that to be very, very interesting. And
So good thing you're on the committee.
well, yes, but
Yeah.
I mean, and we might be the only strategic plan, we could potentially be the only strategic plan in all of Idaho when it's adopted next year to focus on and address the issue of the health of our citizens, which has never before been a component of the strategic plan. So I will keep you informed.
Great news.
Any other business? Hearing none.